Are you struggling to process the fear and anger and grief in these challenging times? I certainly am. So, Karen Kenney is about to give us a masterclass in finding our love and compassion and resilience. She is a beautiful listener, so curious about everything, and coaches people with an extraordinary level of care, combining neuroscience and somatics and other healing modalities to help regulate the nervous system, examine our internal narratives, remove blocks, and reimagine what's possible. With the Karen Kenney podcast and her individual and group coaching programs, Karen's approach to self development is down to earth and funny, and she just cuts to the core of things. She's all about harnessing personal responsibility and exploring the agency we have over our choices and broadening our understanding of spirituality. Oh, you are going to love what she has to say. So let's get the skinny from Karen Kenney. Oh, Karen, I am so excited to talk to you because you just embody it has to be me, your entire story, and you teach it to other people so beautifully. So, I want to start with this pivotal, it has to be me moment that you talk about a lot in your work when your mother was murdered. So, just take me inside how that started you on a trajectory of self awareness, forgiveness, and holding space for others.
Yeah, so the short version is, when I was 12 years old, my sister was 13. My mother was a single mother at the time, and she went out one night, and unbeknownst to us, because we had gone to bed, we woke up the next day and she was missing. And we found out later that day from my stepfather, who, my mother and my stepfather were separated at the time, not living together. And he unexpectedly came to the house after school and basically told us that my mother had been killed. And when I asked him, what he basically said is, look, I'm just going to tell you, your mother is dead. He didn't give us any details. He didn't say anything. And
Ugh.
it wasn't until I had asked him, my sister, as totally makes sense, like freaked out, started screaming and crying and ran off. And I just kind of sat there stoically because my MO for surviving my childhood and him was to kind of fawn. When you think of the trauma response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I was the fawn kid. I was the one who like befriended, that like, please don't hurt me, And
Yeah.
so I was watching him for the cues of like, what do I do? And he wasn't crying and he wasn't doing anything and he wasn't hugging me and there was no affection and there was nothing. And so I just sat there and I said to him, what happened? And I said, Dad, what happened to Ma? And he said, you don't want to know, kid. You don't want to know. But then I read later in the newspaper about like, I don't know, whatever it was, like a half an hour, 40 minutes later, the newspaper had come to the house and I saw on the front page of the paper that it just basically said, the unidentified body of a woman was found half naked from the waist down with her head mutilated.
Ugh.
And I just thought to myself, like, oh my God, they're talking about my mom. And that was just like, it was, I mean, literally, they say there's these moments in your life when there's like before and after. There was a before when my mother was alive, and then there was an after, and that was a pivotal changing point in my life. And as anybody who's listening can imagine, it was incredibly traumatizing, even though at the time I didn't know that. I didn't know that's what I was feeling in my body. I have no doubt that I probably had PTSD for many years, but nobody in my
Oh,
family talked about it. Nobody in my
yes.
family talked about her. Even though it was on the news, even though it was in the newspaper, even though it was everywhere but in our family, and everywhere but in the houses where we stayed. And in that moment, we basically lost our mother. We lost the apartment that we were living in and what we knew to be home. We had to go live with strangers. We moved in with an aunt and uncle. And my life was never the same again. And that kind of just kicked off a lot of, suffering and confusion and anger and fear, like so much fear. It's one of the reasons I think why I was really drawn to ultimately to A Course in Miracles, because one of the heartbeats of A Course in Miracles that everybody everywhere kind of quotes is like, you have but two emotions, love and fear. That's it. And I was a kid who had a lot of fear. So this idea of having access to a deeper love was like really, really appealing to me in my early 20s. And that kind of led me, to finding A Course in Miracles and Marianne Williamson and all these teachers and stuff like that. But as a kid, I was suffering. Like, it was tough out there. And I think it was my desire to end my own suffering that led me to, as I gathered all these tools to help myself somatically, my nervous system, my mind, my spirit. I just gathered up all these different tools. And then my natural inclination, because this is who I was as a kid, I was a sensitive kid. I loved to help animals. I loved to help others. It just became a natural extension of how I serve in the world. Is I wanted to help other people and, uh, you know, um, do my best to help them end their own suffering and realize how much kind of agency and authorship and autonomy and stuff that they have. Because a lot of times when things like that happen to you, you feel like, oh, this happened to me. Like, I have no
Mm.
say in this, and we kind of give up our power in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I want to ask you about suffering and ending your suffering.
Mm.
When the guy that murdered your mother
Mhm.
ended his suffering, it was such an invitation for you to have a different relationship with forgiveness, which is what you teach your community so beautifully. So, can you take me inside that it has to be me moment when you were
Mm.
at BU, at Boston University, and that came into your life, that invitation?
Yeah. So when I was at Boston University my freshman year, I was 17. I had just turned 18, and I had this whole secret plan that I was going to go talk to her killer. Like, they had found, he was in jail. They talked to him, like, they talked to him that day, like the day my mother's body was found. They started interviewing people. They pulled him over, like, so he was caught right away. Um, and he got life in prison. And so he was still alive. And I was like, I had this plan that, like, if I just got the answers, like, there's answers out there. And if I just got these external answers from this external person, it would help me to end my own suffering. Right.
Mm,
I
of
thought that the
course.
answer was out there, but it really had to be me. And I knew it
Yeah.
had to be me. It had to be me in multiple levels. It had to be me to go talk to him because nobody else in my family was talking about it. And it also had to be me who was going to try to end my own suffering because nobody was coming to save me. The one person who would have saved me, my mother, was no longer alive. So I was like, this has to be me. And I just had a plan to go talk to him. And before I could go do that, I mean, we're talking like days. Now, again, I always say I don't know if the prison or he would even accept visitors, but this was my big plan. And just days before I found out that, before I, was going to go do this plan over Christmas, I found out that he had killed himself in prison. So that blew that plan. That plan went right out the window. But what happened later is that my family at Christmas time, one side of my family, I should say more specifically, was kind of celebrating his death. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't feel the same way, that I was struggling with thinking of his family because I knew he was a father. I knew he was a husband. I knew he had children. And all I kept thinking is, like, what kind of Christmas are they having? Like, their father's dead. He's never coming back. He had little kids, like little kids. And Leonard Cohen has that great quote where he says, there's a crack in everything. It's how the light gets in. Some people
Mm,
also attribute it to Rumi, whatever, but he made it
yeah.
famous in the song. He made it famous in his song. But it was in that moment that there was like a crack in my heart that let a little light in, a little compassion in, because I was able to stop seeing this guy as a coward and a monster and a piece of shit and all the things I felt and thought. And it humanized him a little bit. And I kind of got to see, it's like I talk a lot of times, like, how our experience as humans is like a kaleidoscope. And if you just turn it a smidge, right? In A Course in Miracles, we say a shift in your mind from fear to love, that's the miracle, right? So it
Yes.
was like a miracle. It was like a miracle that that moment could happen. And I could let the light in enough that I was willing to look at him and the world in that situation slightly differently. And that started the forgiveness process over time. And it didn't happen overnight. It was over many years. But I got there.
Yeah, now you are helping us all get there in spectacular fashion. So, you talk about finding a course in miracles. How did the light lead you there?
Oh my God. So when I graduated from BU, Like, I was a kid, like, I didn't have parents. Like, my aunt and uncle dropped me off at BU at 17. I had a car, a used car, right? But, like, I was on my own from 17 on. So, well, like, when my friends were, like, on Christmas break going home, I had no home to go home to. I had nowhere to go except, like, crashing on my sister's couch or staying at a friend's house, like, whatever. And same thing, when I graduated from BU, everybody was like, because I was in comm, like I was a, copywriter and advertising, whatever, major. I was a communications major, really. But everybody was like getting their portfolios together, getting ready for their internship at their dad's company, and I was like, shit, I gotta find a place to live and I gotta get a job. So I never worked in my field. I never worked in advertising. I spent like, all that money to go to this university and I was just like dog paddling to keep my head above water. Um, and so what basically happened is I moved in with a friend of mine and she was a year younger than me. And she was at Emerson in Boston. When she graduated, Emerson had this wicked good internship program. So she got a job at CBS in Los Angeles. And she's
Yeah.
like, so do you want to come with me? And I'm like, my mother's dead. My family doesn't really care. Sure. And I had I had like $1,200 in my pocket. That was it. That I got as a tip. I literally had no money. I had no money. And I had this one client I was a concierge at the Hyatt Regency in Cambridge. And this guy, Doc Strasberg, I'll never forget him. I know he's dead now. He's got to be.
Wow.
He left me a tip for $1,200 and a Thomas guide. Remember the Thomas guides to get around
Yeah.
LA? He left me a Thomas guide and a $1,200 tip. And that's what I took.
Oh.
And a suitcase. And that's what I took to LA. And when I got to LA, I mean, the suffering continued, but I was always a kid. Like one of the things my mother instilled a lot of beautiful things in me, but one of the things she definitely instilled in me was a love of words, a love of reading, a love of books. So I always sought comfort in books. Like Stephen
Yeah.
King books. Stephen King saved my life. Like I was never suicidal. I don't mean it that way. I was being dramatic, but he did. He saved me in some way. So books were always a place that I went to find comfort. Books and animals all day long. So I ended up going to work I didn't work at a bookstore, but I hung out at the bookstore all the time. I had no money to always like necessarily buy the books, right? I would like max out my little tiny credit card or whatever. But I was in the bookstore one day. This is a fun story. I'll tell it fast. But I was in the bookstore
Oh,
one day.
you were in Crown Books in
I was in
Burbank. I
Crown
know
Books
this
in
about you
Burbank.
because I
Yeah.
loved that bookstore. I wept when it closed. Oh.
Yeah, I love that bookstore. I ended up working at that bookstore because I was there so often.
Oh.
I remember
I
walking.
probably met you all those years ago, you know?
We were in LA at the same time.
Right?
We were in LA
You
at the
probably
same
sold me a book.
Probably did. But I was in the bookstore and back then, and I still strength train like 3 days a week. I became a personal trainer at one point. But so I was really into like lifting weights and whatever. And I'm walking straight back to the store where like the muscle section was, the fitness section was. And as I'm walking down there, I literally hear a voice in my head. And it says, I always say my spiritual team's looking funny. It was like, you should go to the self-help section because you could really
I think we all have that voice in our head.
I was like, oh, okay. So I wandered over to the self-help section. There's nobody else in the aisle. And literally, this book fell off the shelf, boom, landed at my feet. And it was A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. And on
great
the
book.
cover, it's the old cover. It's like this lady. If you're listening and you're not watching this, I'm putting my fist in my chin right. And there's a picture of this woman, and it says Return to Love, reflections on the principles of A Course in Miracles. And immediately I think two thoughts. And the first thing I think is, who's this broad? As I'm like, who's this broad? And then I read the title and I think A Course in Miracles. And I thought to myself, shit, I could use a miracle. And so this is before there were chairs in bookstores and you were allowed to, I just grabbed the book, I sat on the floor and I started to read it. And I always say Marianne's book is a gateway drug to A Course in Miracles. It is the gateway drug to A Course in Miracles. And so
Totally.
So I opened it up and she was the first teacher. She was the first person to, number one, ever talk about God in that particular way.
Yes.
She was also the first person to ever say a sentence like, basically you have a choice between your suffering, right? You get to choose. We don't get to control what happens to us, what happens in the world, but we certainly have a choice to how we are going to respond to what happens to us in the world. You can either choose love or fear. You can choose suffering or whatever. Like, I was like, oh, wait, I have a choice? And that actually equally like pissed me off and got me wicked excited, because if I had a choice, that meant I had control, which meant I didn't have to be at the mercy of the world and I didn't have to be a victim of the
Yes.
world. And that changed my life.
I think a lot of people would say that that book changed their life.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just so we're, dear listener, to bring you onto the couch with Karen and me, let's talk about what that philosophy was about the understanding of God that you had not heard before, because just so we're all on the same page, because we all have
Yeah.
our own understanding and have a right to our own understanding about what God is and means to us. And you say
Yes.
that you had not heard Marianne's perspective before. So can you just share with us that perspective and the perspective you now share so that we can all
Yeah.
be on the same page here?
Yeah, I mean, I think as it's important to say, as a certified spiritual mentor, my whole thing is helping people to develop their own personal relationship to the divine, whatever that is to them. I don't
Yeah.
care if they call it God, source, universe, higher power, like the creative life force, goddess. Like, I do not get hung up on names like that. All to me, all that God really is. I mean, so many of us grow up with this personification of an old white guy with the beard in the sky handing out judgment. No, we like following the commandments, and you have to be a particular way or you're not getting, like, it's such a racket, it's such a racket. And as a Catholic kid, I was raised as a Catholic kid, and there's a
Yeah.
whole story I'm not going to tell, but at 13, I made a definitive decision that if I literally said, I was at the front of the church after just coming out of the confession booth. It's a whole story, but I'm standing at the front of the church looking up at like Jumbotron Jesus, like just suffering up on the cross for me, suppose. Like, I was just looking up at him, and I'm looking over at the statue of Mary, and I'm looking around this church, and all of a sudden I say to Jesus, look, or I say to God, literally, I look up, I'm kneeling down, I look up, and I literally said, like, look, from now on, if you got something to say to me and I got something to say to you, we're just going to say it to each other. There's no more middlemen. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
I love that.
So I wanted a really personal relationship with whatever that was. And
Yeah.
so for me, I always say, like, adult humans have let me down like 1,000 times. I'm not saying they did it on purpose. Everybody's doing, I shouldn't say that. I don't believe that everybody's doing the best they can. I think most people are doing the best they can. So I don't think, people set
Ooh.
out to wake up and be an asshole. Some people have like mastered the art of being an asshole, but I think most people wake up and like want to be a good person. So my point is, so in A Course in Miracles, the just the approach is like really different. So if you don't know what A Course in Miracles is, I'll just show it, because I'm just gonna hold it up. So it's a book, right?
Please do, because it's just
Yeah,
such a
it,
beautiful
it's a
book.
book. I really see it as a teaching tool. It's not a religion. There's no dogma. There's no doctrine. But this was like a book that's considered like a channeled work, meaning like there was a little old Jewish atheist who basically heard a voice. It said its name was Jesus, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I'm
And
reading it.
if you're watching this on YouTube, Karen just pulled up the book that has so many colored tabs on it
Oh,
because she has been carrying this. The spine is off the book because she has thumbed her way through this book for decades and decades.
for like
It is
30
a
years.
well-loved book to say the least.
Yes. Yeah, and it basically just put the power back in my hand, and it taught me, which is what
Yeah.
I also share with my clients, about cause and effect. That it
Mm.
is our own thinking that is creating the reality that we are experiencing. It is our mind, and that our mind can miscreate. And it's the ego mind that, like in A Course in Miracles, there's a line that says, the ego always speaks first and it speaks loudest. And I always add in, and it's
Yes.
always wrong. And so I started to realize that my experience of the world, while I couldn't do anything about the things that happened a lot of the times, I could make a decision to choose love and fear, right? There's two emotions. How do I want to respond to this thing, whether it's awful, whether it's beautiful, whatever? Like, I wanted to have agency. And there's a line that says, projection makes perception. And the
Mm.
easiest way I try to explain this to people and to my clients, and I hope your listeners will find this helpful. Like if you go to a movie and you go to a movie theater and the movie up on the screen starts to get weird and wobbly and whatever, you know, going up to that screen and banging on it does no good. You have to go to the source of the problem. So what do? You go up to the projection booth. You go up to the one who is projecting the image onto the screen. And in A Course in Miracles, what we say is our mind is like the projector. It is projecting out onto the world. And we see it out there and we perceive it. And we think that the world is the cause of our suffering when really we think the world is the cause of the suffering and we're at the effect of the world. When really it is, call it our unconscious, our patterns, our habits, our beliefs, our stories that we tell. We are projecting that onto the world and other people. And then we're getting pissed off at what we're seeing. And I often say to people, like, you're getting mad because your husband can't communicate well. You're getting mad because this is happening over here. And I always say to people, you know, and this is very like kind of a Course in Miracles-y thing to say, but and there's other teachers like John Overdurf who have said something, you know, in this vein as well and in this way, which is like, people can only be as good in your presence as they first are in your mind.
Oh, yes.
So my whole thing was like, well, if I want to walk around, you know, being miserable and being like in the victim loop and poor me, the dead murdered mother and all this stuff, I could get away with the dead murdered mother card for a long time. Like I could play that card for a long time and get away with a lot of stuff because people would feel bad for you. People would whatever. I could play that victim card all day long. And some people do, right? Like some people get dealt a hand in life that is not fair, that is not fair, that is horrible, that is awful. You know, and Marianne said one day to me, and she has said it, I'm sure, to many others, but she says, it doesn't matter how you got it, meaning my suffering. It's
Mm.
yours now. What are you going to do about it? And so I kind of became like in my work with people and in my coaching, you know, I call it your story to your glory because we all are showing up with these stories. And I'll say like, yeah, but like now what? Because we've assigned a lot of meaning to these things. And whether that's I'm not, you know, I'm not lovable. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm too much. I'm not enough. I'm stupid. I'm too heavy. I'm too uh, just the 1,000 ways that the you know, I always say like we come into the world fine, Fine, we're fine. Like you come through with the download is like as Eric Schiffman, my yoga teacher, one of my yoga teachers, Eric Schiffman says, your DNA is God. So like we come in fine, and then we get defined. We get defined with other people's labels and their bullshit and their generational trauma and all the stuff that rolls downhill because people aren't doing their own work. And then we get defined in two ways. And now the work is like we're refining. We're refining. We're remembering who we truly are, you know? And so that's what I kind of like to help people to do is to shift those old stories, not pretend like they didn't have them, not do this toxic positivity bullshit, but to take a look at it. And it's like, yeah, this really hurt. But I will tell you this, dear listener, I would not be the same person had my mother lived. I don't know who I would have been,
Oh.
but I would not be the same person. And I almost guarantee you, I was too attached to her. I was too attached to her. She was the sun to my universe. I don't know if I would have left for college. I don't know if I would have ever went to LA and met Marianne and worked with Marianne Williamson and just like, I don't know who I would have become. I can't predict. But that loss in that way caused such suffering that it catapulted. There was nothing I could do, like, but find my way to these amazing teachers. And back then, they weren't coaches like you and I. They were coaches when you and I were coming up. They
And
were
you had to
both.
work to go and see people. Like you couldn't watch them online. You couldn't get on Zoom with them. You had to
No!
drive 3 hours and sit in a studio and watch them speak in person or go to a stadium or whatever. Like we
Or
just
get
didn't
their cassette
have
tape.
that
Get their
immediate access like we do now.
Yeah. There's no YouTube. There was no like, it was like you,
Right.
you had to put in the work just to do the work. Like you had to put in the work just to do the work.
Absolutely. I mean, you had to really, really want it.
On it.
And I think now you have to really, really want it. Like we can consume content, but unless we are receiving it and then applying it and then working it and practicing and exercising those muscles, it's just information. I mean, I think we've all got infobesity, like there's just so much information, but it's what we're doing with it. I want to ask you about something you just said, which is just so interesting to me about I wouldn't be the person I was had my mother not died. And yet, what you teach so beautifully is that she is on your spiritual team and is with you, and you carry her with you with everything that you do and everything that you
Yes.
are. So,
Yes.
holding that relationship with your people, whether they are
Mhm.
physically in relationship with you or not, is such a huge piece of this.
Yes.
So, I want to ask you about gathering your spiritual team
Yes.
is something you teach so beautifully and what that means for you and what that can mean
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah. So there's a line in A Course in Miracles towards the end of the workbook because the book is broken into 3 sections. There's the text, which the text lays down like the theoretical foundation. The workbook is when you work it. It's 365 days of daily lessons, and you cannot get away from yourself. You cannot get away from your own bullshit. You cannot help. And the workbook is designed that the first half of the workbook, it's the relinquishment of a thought system of fear. And the second
Yeah.
half of the workbook is taking on a system of love, a thought system of love. And then there's like a manual for teachers in the back and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the workbook, there's this line, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically like, God has placed his angels all around you. And I always think in my head, above and below, left and right, in front and behind. And it basically says, God has placed his angels all around you, for I would not leave you comfortless. And what that did for me reading it like in my early 20s. And let me be clear, like I was not ready for A Course in Miracles when I first got that book. We jokingly say in the kind of this community, like, and I'm not really a part of the Course in Miracles community because people can get really fucking weird around like any kind of thought system. Like I'm just like, A Course in Miracles is a self-study program. It's not go over here and find out what they think and go over. It's a self-study program.
Yeah.
I'm not
Thank you
saying don't.
so much for drawing that distinction because it's so
Yeah.
important. And I really love the way that you hold this book as a personal practice
Oh my God. Yeah.
instead
I
of
mean,
a cult community.
yeah, yeah. But what I was gonna say is, like, I started to say in the community, and I'm like, which I'm kind of not really a part of, but we say it is the most best-selling unread book of all time. Ask anybody, just about anybody in LA, and they'll be like, "I have A Course in Miracles." I'm like, "Yeah, when's the last time you blew the dust off that sucker? Because clearly it doesn't seem like you're reading it, or practicing it." So funny. I'm just joking. I'm being fresh, but
It's so true though. It's just it
but
was
my
like
first.
the bookshelf, the book du
Oh,
jour, of
yes,
that time, right? Where
yes.
everybody had it. It was like the trendy thing to have, but
'Cause
nobody was really
everybody
working it.
Yeah, because Marianne was on Oprah, and Oprah, like, blew up, like, A Return to Love, and
It's
everybody read A
so
Return to Love,
true.
and
Yeah.
then everybody was like, "What's the next?" Right? And then everybody, "What's a Course
Yep.
in Miracles?" Blah, blah. But my point is, like, I was not ready for those messages. Like, I heard it, and, like, I could digest A Return to Love. I started reading A Course in Miracles. I'm like, "This seems like a foreign language," because it was foreign to me. I was a little masshole kid. I was a little knucklehead, blue-collar kid holding on for dear life, getting these messages about, like, my innocence, and I'm the light of the world. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I would throw that book across the room. You talk about the spine being off that. I'm like, yeah, you know how many times I threw that book because I was like, I don't get it. But anyway, so A Course in Miracles has this beautiful language. And what a lot of people don't know about it is most of the book it's almost impossible to believe. And this is how we know it could not have come from a human. It's like 1,600 pages long, and it's written, a lot of it is written in iambic pentameter. It's like a poem to me. It's like a love song.
Mm.
It's like a love letter from like Jesus to us. That's how I think of it sometimes. And I don't subscribe. I don't think Jesus belongs to any one religion. I call Jesus a free agent. Anybody who's into Jesus, he can be your guy. Like, don't let them ruin God for you. Don't let them ruin this idea of personal spirituality. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so I see this thing, angels all around you, and I think, oh my God. So where the humans had like let me down so often, right? I'm like, God has never let me down. The divine has never let me down. My inner teacher, that voice, right? Whether we call it Holy Spirit, spirit, intuition, instinct, gut instinct, I don't care what you call it. I call it the inner teacher. I call it a lot of names. I don't get hung up on the names. But I was like, I have helpers. And I have a few of them on my desk right now. Like, I'll hold this up. So this is a little statue of Sekhmet. Sekhmet is the lion-headed goddess from Egypt. She's on my spiritual team. Little picture of my mom. My mom's on my spiritual team, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here's Ganesh, right? He's on my spiritual
Oh,
team.
yes,
Okay.
I have that too. I have him too.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you look in the back in the corner, you can see a little stuffed animal that our beautiful friend, our mutual friend Aaron sent me. It's Bob Ross. And Bob Ross taught us about like, we don't make mistakes. He's like, oh, you ever just like, make mistakes? Oh, they're birds now. They're birds now. He's like a painter on television, and he was so kind to us. And Mr. Rogers is on my spiritual team, and Maya
Oh,
Angelou is on my spiritual team.
yes. She's
Wolves are
on
on my
mine
spiritual.
too.
Yeah, so what you do is, for me, it's about collecting. Yes, sometimes it's your dead. My mom's on my spiritual team. Swami Kripalu, Bapuji, he's called.
Yes.
He's on my spiritual team. Gandhi's on my spiritual team. Martin Luther King Jr.'s on my spiritual team.
Yes.
I have a cast of animals. Anytime I've ever had any kind of like reading, psychic reading, sometimes they'll say, there's a big man behind you. And I say, oh, I don't know who that is. I just call him grandfather, right? So I just it's like cultivating. It's like your ancestors are on your spiritual team. And Maya Angelou said it beautifully once. She said, whenever I go out on stage, I don't go out on stage alone. All
Mm,
my ancestors, all the people who have loved me. And Mr. Rogers talked about how there have been kind of people who have like loved us into being. And I think all
yes.
those people are with me. And it's just kind of like a surroundedness of these people who have qualities in me that sometimes are just at this moment potential. But I want to be more patient. And I'm like, oh my God, Mr. Rogers was the most loving and kind and patient person. Yes. And so I basically have created a spiritual team, and I say, these are your helpers. These are your divine helpers, and they're available 24/7, and you can call them collect, and you don't have to belong to a religion. They're just there. And they are like, that phrase, the nature of our better angels, right? And that's how I think of it. And this is one of the ways that I have navigated in my life. And I'll share this because this was a life-changing thing for me too, and I think it'll be helpful for anybody who's listening. And don't worry if you're like, I don't pray or I don't know. This is a very powerful thing to say each day, whether you believe in something greater than you or not. And it's a prayer in A Course in Miracles, and it's just slightly paraphrased, but it says, every morning I say to God, my mom, my spiritual team, my inner teacher, right? Because I always say, like, if I'm driving the bus alone, we're fucked. Like, we're in trouble. So I want,
Yes.
there's a line in A Course in Miracles that says, I will no longer make decisions by myself. And it's like, I will no longer make decisions by myself because I've realized it is no longer intelligent to do so. Okay. So we say, like, every morning, please have me go where you would have me go. Have me do what you would have me do. Have me say what you would have me say. And to whom? Please use me. Please use me. Please use me.
Mm.
And I always say, may I be in service to love. I say, guide my head, my heart, my hands. Please be in charge of my thoughts, my words, and my actions. And then I'm open for business. I'm open for business. And this is when we start to build that trust in the inner teacher, the inner voice, because the voice for God or the voice for spirit or the voice for love, it doesn't shout like the ego, it whispers. And so we have to get quiet enough to hear it. We have to be able to learn how to turn down the noise. And that's what a DSP, a daily spiritual practice, is really helpful. Whether it's meditation, contemplation, journaling, being out in nature, there's 1,000 ways. I think there's like Rumi or Hafiz says, there's 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. There's
Mhm.
1,000 ways to practice. There's 1,000 ways to be open for business, to transition from your story, transform that old story into your glory. It's the remembering of who you are beyond all the shit that's happened. Beyond all that, there is a place in you. There is a place in you that is untouched by the things of this world.
Oh, I love that. I love how you call it being in the fearless flow.
Yes. I was a kid who had a lot of fear. Do you have more to say about that? Another question?
No, gosh, I
Oh,
have so many questions.
okay.
Where do I start? Thank you for asking me that. I would say that I'm an adult that has a lot of fear,
Me too.
and I also am an adult that has a lot of love. And I was a
Yeah.
child that had a lot of love and a lot of fear, and I will continue to be. And it's that dance of how we hold those things and then what we choose to act on. And like you were saying about the projector, I loved the way you described that, and what we're projecting and putting out there and holding and receiving and giving,
Yeah.
etc. I want to ask you about some of the tools that you have
Yeah.
gathered, of which
Yes.
there are many,
Yes.
that you have used and continue to use in your personal journey, but tools that you use with your clients. And I know it's
Yes.
different for each person in
Sure.
your one on one coaching and then in your group, of how we can shift the stories that we tell each other and
Yeah.
tell ourselves and then
Yes.
project onto each other.
Yeah.
So I know that you deal a lot with the conscious and the unconscious mind
Hmm.
in order to help shift that in people. So can you tell me a little bit about your journey with that, and how you are using some of these tools with your clients?
Yeah. And thank you for asking. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your deep listening. You're such a fantastic listener. Um,
Oh, thank you for
oh, it's,
receiving that, and right back at you. It's easy to give and receive when you're present with somebody who is wanting to do that as well.
I really appreciate it. And one of the things I want to say, because I want to go back to that little piece about fearless flow and you saying, I'm an adult who has a lot of fear, but I'm also an adult who has a lot of love, right? And I think one of the things that's kind of happening in the spiritual community and in the mindset, in the coaching community is all this stuff about like, you got to regulate your nervous system. You got to feel safety in your body. You got to feel safety in your nervous system. I'm like, look, I didn't feel safe before my mother died. I certainly didn't, because now I had proof, right? Now I had evidence that the world wasn't safe when something like that happens to your mother. Then try to be a woman in this world. Here's the facts. This is not a safe world. In A Course in Miracles, we would say that this world, there's a line in the Course that talks about, and I am going to talk about the tools, but this is important that I say this. There's a line in A Course in Miracles that basically says, you feel like an alien here because you are, because this world is not your real home. And so often what we're longing for is that experience of perfect oneness and love, perfect love and safety. But I have accepted that I will probably never feel 100% safe in this world. I don't think I'll ever, you know, um, I don't shouldn't say that. I'm open for business, but I think that there's so much. We are so bombarded, especially as women, and of course other communities, trans, right, Black people, the LGBTQIA community. I mean, if you're, I mean, we could go off on. I'm not going to go off on that whole tangent, but
Yeah.
let me just say, a lot of us don't feel safe in the world. So for me, my work is not about insisting that I feel safety all the time. My work is, how can I feel safe enough? How can I
Oh, I
feel
love that.
safe enough to do what I came here to do? To be the best expression of, in A Course in Miracles, we say everybody has an individual curriculum. I have my own divine assignment, and I need to feel safe enough in my own experience, in my own body, in my own mind, to be able to do the work that I came here to do. So sometimes I do have to do it scared. Sometimes I step on a stage and I'm like, right? But I'm going to do it anyways because I have enough tools to help me to be able to then do the scary thing. But I don't want to white knuckle it anymore. I don't want to be the kid with her dukes up who just toughs it out and pretends like she's not freaking out. You know what I mean? So some of the tools that I use are somatic. I've been a yoga teacher for over 25 years. And I've also been doing Thai yoga massage, Thai yoga sessions. since since 2008. So just knowing how to move the body, knowing pranayama, knowing how to do breath work, and certain breaths that bring our energy up, certain breaths that bring our energy down, certain breaths that just kind of level us out, right? So I like to do somatic work, because if the body's not on board, it's like, your heart's hammering in your chest, your throat. Like, it's like, how can I help my nervous system to experience a more parasympathetic experience?
Yeah.
Because soon, all this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know,
Oh, but I
but
love hearing it through your lens.
yeah, anytime you go into fight and flight, the smarty pants part of your brain shuts down. And you just start to make
Yeah.
decisions where your fullest self, your truest self is not online. So I'm like, okay, I knew in the beginning, I started with yoga, that was my first path. Like, I was reading A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles, a lot of people can be up in their head with it. It can be a very intellectual kind of approach. So I kind of had that going on. And then I had to drop into my body, and A Course in Miracles says you need to take a journey without distance from your head to your heart. And I was like, oh, I need to get into my heart. Like, I need to get into my body. Okay. So these divine breadcrumbs were just laid at my feet. And I was just like, do, 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 do. Just, I had no plan. Like, there are kids who are like, I want to be a mother when I grow. I want to get married. I want to go to this school. I'm going to go to this thing. I'm going to reverse engineer. Like, you're a wicked good reverse engineer, right? I literally was just following the breadcrumbs. Like, oh, okay. I was just like, whatever. So the somatic tools. And then I became a spiritual mentor. My spiritual mentor, we were talking one day. I don't have to tell the whole long story, but it was a divine intervention. And it was the last time she was ever going to be teaching this training. She's a Harvard Divinity graduate. She used to be a psychologist. She was a professor. She was so fucking smart. She was a shaman. She was this. She recites the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. She's an interfaith minister. She created a school. She's brilliant. And so under her wing, I became a certified spiritual mentor. I lived and worked with Marianne when I lived in LA. I had up close personal for a year, lived and traveled, and talk about it's that kind of intense mentorship. It was
Oh,
I couldn't get away with shit. I'm with Marianne
oh,
Williamson. So,
oh
Mary,
my goodness. I mean,
Mary,
being in a room with her, I've only been in a room with a group of people with her, but it was a small
yeah,
group of people
yeah,
a couple of times in LA. And it
yeah.
was, you can't even describe it, what it's like to be in a room with her. So I can't imagine what it's like to be solo in a room with her.
She's a force of nature. And I will say
Oh,
this, one of my tools, even though I was a Catholic kid, I came up, I understood prayer. I prayed my whole life, whatever. A Course in Miracles, it talks about this. This is what I love. A Course in Miracles says, basically, this is a part of your problem solving repertoire. So I started collecting tools to be a part of my spiritual toolkit for my problem solving repertoire, because being a human, it's not easy. It's hard. It's hard humaning. People be peopling all the time, and it's hard. And I wanted to have a lot of tools, and I didn't want to just have one tool. Because when I was frustrated, I didn't want to be told, just, relax, breathe. I'm like, no, don't namaste me right now. No, right? So I wanted a lot of different tools. But Marianne was one of the first people that I got to see it in action, because talking about that trial by fire, right? We were banging heads one day. I'll never forget. We laughed. She was just on my podcast. We laughed telling the story, but we were banging heads, and she's like, well, I think you. And I'm like, well, I think you. And we were at this standstill, and we just could not hear each other, whatever. And then she goes, I always do impressions of her. And she's like, darling, would you like to pray with me for a moment? And I was like, you guys can't see my face, but I was rolling my oh God, I'm so annoyed with you right now. The last thing I want to do is pray with you. Okay. So we go in the other room, we sit down, facing each other, she's on a chair, I'm on the couch, knee to knee, and we hold hands and we pray. And I was like, son of a bitch, it works. I could feel
oh,
my heart softening towards her. I could
yeah.
feel myself not. Of Course in Miracles says you can have a grievance or you can have a miracle. You cannot have both. And I was like, you could be right or you could be happy. It teaches me. So I was like, do I want to hold on to this grudge against this mentor, this person who I love, who I see as a mother figure, who I know adores me, would not have invited me into her home and her life to work here and do this? Like, that's my ego that wants to hold on to this. And it was the power of prayer. Because as soon as you call upon your spiritual team or your internal teacher or the Holy Spirit, you never get turned away. It's like, are you willing? And that's all you need. Guys, listening, if you take away anything, just hear this. All you need is the tiniest bit of willingness, like a mustard seed grain of willingness for a miracle to occur. Just saying, I could choose peace instead of this. Please help me to see this person, myself, this situation differently. That's prayer. Like if you're like, I don't pray, that's all prayer is just like asking for help. Meditation is when you get quiet so you can receive the guidance. It's really, you get to pray however you want to pray. And that was a really big tool. Then I learned about like hypnosis. So I'm an integrative hypnosis. My teacher, Melissa Tiers, is one of the most brilliant teachers and coaches on the planet. And she teaches psychologists she teaches doctors and psychiatrists, and she's brilliant. And she talks a lot about the unconscious mind. And what we don't realize is part of the storytelling that we all do is that whether it's 93%, 95%, 97%, pick a number, it doesn't matter. But 93%, whatever, of everything we think, say, and do comes from our unconscious mind. And we think we're so smart walking around making our plans and doing it all. We're basically just we're just basically playing out the programs and the patterns and the habits of the house that we grew up in, right? The origin family, those stories of your culture, your church, your siblings or not, your parents or not, your guardians, foster care, whatever. We get patterned and conditioned. And as a hypnotist, I always say, like, I'm dehypnotizing you because you're already hypnotized. I'm
So
hypnotize you,
true.
So I use hypnosis. I use EFT tapping, bilateral stimulation, anything we can do to like break up the pattern of the way that we go down our pattern road. Anxiety is a pattern, it's a habit. Addiction is a pattern, it's a habit. Depression is a pattern and a habit. And even chronic pain, I'm not saying chronic pain isn't real, but the way that the brain works on predictive error, it's predicting you're going to feel that way. Even when the tissue is healed and the wound is closed, it's still predicting that pattern. And if we don't have pattern interrupts, hello, transform your story to your glory. We're just going to stay stuck in that victim loop. We're going to stay stuck in those old ways of being, old ways of thinking. So the work that I do, I come at it from like practical neuroscience, spiritual mentoring, somatic awareness, emotional intelligence, subconscious reprogramming, because I want to be able to talk to, like, I always say, a guy jackhammering on the street in Boston. I want to be like, hey, pal, come here. I got something that's going to help you, To somebody who's been on a spiritual path for a while. I want to be able to talk to I'm the worst marketer, Tess. I'm the worst. You know why? Because they're like, who do you work with? I'm like, people. Like women, 25 to 45, college educated, sip. No, people. Men, people. And what's funny is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up because I know I'm talking a lot.
Please
But
don't shut
no,
up. My
no,
God.
but somebody once said to me, oh, do you work with kids? Because like, man, if kids could work with you. And I said, well, technically I work with adults, but really I'm just dealing with and working with little kids in adult bodies.
Exactly. I was just going to say the same thing. It's just so true. We've spoken about this so much on the podcast, and you and I as well, just about we're walking around often getting triggered and reacting as our child self rather than responding as the adult that we are today. I want to ask you about how your journey from walking around the world and sitting with all of these practices and these beautiful mentors and continuing to be on your own spiritual journey and growth journey, and then claiming it has to be me to hold space for others and be on their spiritual team. What was that like for you, claiming your role as a leader in this space, as a mentor? What
You
was
know,
that
it's
journey like for you? And
yeah,
and
let me
I imagine is an ongoing journey as it is for me,
look
you
at
know?
we're never done. As long as I'm above ground,
Absolutely.
there'll be stuff to do. But there's this interesting story. There was a turning point where, I was working and living with Marianne, and I went to go see this woman. This was in California, and I went to go see this woman who was like a psychic, like tarot reader, like an intuitive, right? I'll never, ever, ever forget this. So I'm like 25, 20, however old I was. And I sit down. And of course, as soon as people hear me talk, they're like, where are you from? Like, who are you? And so I said, I'm Karen Kenney, I'm from Boston, whatever. And she's like, so tell me about you. Like, who are you? Like, what do you do? Who do you want to be? Like, what's the skinny, basically, as you would say.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to be the next Marianne Williamson. I had never uttered that out loud before, but she was
Yeah.
so her presence just allowed everything to relax in me, and I, like, blurted out. I always jokingly say to people, "Your subconscious is leaking." So I, like, just blurted this thing out, and I will never, ever, 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 ever forget this for as long as I live. She looked me dead in the eyes, and she said to me, "Why don't you try being the first Karen Kenney?"
Oh, that's a
And I still
beautiful
get chills
gift.
to this day.
Yeah.
That was like 35, I don't even know. But I was like, "Oh my god." And then I was like, "What does that mean?" Now, I always knew I loved to write. I mean, really, my first gig I ever wanted when I was a little kid is I wanted to be Dr. Dolittle. Like, I wanted the power to talk to animals. Like, that's what I really and then I knew I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to tell stories, whatever. I wanted to be a veterinarian, right? And then, like, slowly but surely, I was literally like, I cannot stress this enough. There was no plan, Tess. Like, I was out in LA working for Marianne. She got a gig in Michigan, so she left. I came back to the East Coast, and I was like, I had become a personal trainer too while I was in LA. And I come back, I'm like, what am I gonna do? So I was like, I became a professional organizer. I had a little company, my first entrepreneurship thing, and I called it Divine Order. Whatever. Which is basically just me using my OCD-ish, like, control tendencies to neaten up other people's problems in houses, right? So I was like, "Okay, that's not it." And then I thought I was gonna go to school to become, a psychologist. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna become a therapist because I love people love." And you probably have this same experience, but put me anywhere in a room and somebody's telling me their life story. People just come and talk to me. People
Yeah.
just say things to me, right? Like, I'm sure you've had this experience. And I was like, "Oh, I really love, like, helping people." So when I first moved back here, I was looking for, like, a yoga studio to practice at, and I wasn't a teacher yet. And I found this studio. I was practicing a lot, and then my teacher at the time one day, I said, "Do you have a minute? I have a couple of questions after class, whatever." And he's like, "Yeah." And I just started asking him all these questions, and he said to me, "Sounds to me like you might wanna be a yoga teacher." And I shit you not, it sounds dramatic, but in my mind, it was like, "Ah," like the clouds parted, and like
Oh, you have the same choir in your head that I do?
the ray of light, like, hits me, and I was like, "Whoa," because here's the thing. I had never it never had even occurred to me, even though I had been like, ugh. In my cheerleaders in high school, we were not like the flippy, like, we were hardcore rough. We were like rough cheerleaders. Like, we'd get to the top of a pyramid and like flip the bird, or like we were not like fancy. But even though I was like student council, softball, captain of the cheerleaders, most popular, I was voted most popular in high school, whatever. My outside things did not match how I felt internally. You know what I'm saying? It looked
Yeah.
good on paper, but I was having a different internal experience. So the thought of me leading a yoga class, it was like, holy shit, like I could do that? Like me?
Mm.
Like it gets to be me? It has to be me? This is a calling? And so I went and I lived at Kripalu for like a whole month and I did my YTT and I became a teacher. And then I started like being in front of people and leading groups and leading workshops. And then I started having a TV show for like 13 years because I just thought there are a bunch of people out there, people who are in prison, people who don't have cars, people who are housebound, people who have, anxiety, who don't leave their home. And this can help so many people. And I just wanted to help people. So I did a TV show for 13 years for free. I just did my time and like gave it away. And the meanwhile, I'm like trying to, write this book and like do all this stuff. So I think I was just a natural helper. Like, I think I just came through and, I've been vegan for 24 years because I can't, and that's a longer story, but I can't stand the thought of contributing to any living being suffering. Not saying I don't, not saying there aren't some people out there got a list of me being a, pain in the ass. But I really
But not
want,
on purpose. That's
ex-
the difference, isn't it?
right. Just
That
clumsy. We're clumsy.
that whole thing of hurt people. Well, all kinds of people hurt people, but we aim to not do it on purpose. And then
That's
if we
right.
find out that we do, we make amends, we take
That's right.
responsibility, we show up with
Right.
love, and we figure it out together. We
That's
pray
right.
together, whatever that looks like, just like your story
Yeah.
with Marianne, right? Yeah.
And I think the bottom line is that, like, you know, um, I jokingly talk about my business in this way. Like, I always say, like, I jokingly say, like, I'm a terrible marketer because I'm not doing like my perfect avatar. I'm like, are you suffering? We could probably talk to each other. You know what I mean? You got some shit going on.
Which is every person on earth. Exactly.
That's what my friends always say. Like, a friend once said to me, I don't know if there's anybody you can't help. And I laugh and I say, well, look, there's certain things. I'm not, hashtag not a therapist. So if somebody came to me, like, I stay in my lane. Like, I'm not going to help people with like, like, BPD or bipolar. Like, I got to be smart and keep people safe. So I know what's mine, and I try to do my best to know what's
Yeah.
mine and where I can help and where I can't help. I don't take on the role of a mental health, counselor or whatever. But I will say that, oh, what was I going to say? Hold on. Oh, with my marketing and with my business, a lot of times people have very clear, like, I think with your business, with your programs, your beautiful programs that so many people benefit from, it's very distinct, right? It's like, this is what I help with. I have this team. So you get me on these days and you get these programs and it's 60 days and it's a reset. And here's what happens. And here's the other course if you can't afford, right? Whatever. And with me, it's like, I call that there's a symptom, there's a problem, and there's a solution, right? Most people start to have symptoms, whether it's in their body, whether they're going through menopause, they're gaining weight, they're losing their hair. People are like, I'm bloated all the time, I'm run down, I'm exhausted. Like, it's pretty clear cut. And then they're like, so what's the problem? I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. Solution, Google, test, Blender Girl, let's go. With me, I always say, nobody's laying in bed at 3 a.m. going, if I only had a spiritual mentor, like all my problems would be solved. Because a lot of times the symptoms that they have, they don't even really know what the real problem is. And if you don't know what the real problem is, it doesn't even occur to you that the solution might be somebody like me. So even you just bringing me on the podcast and allowing me to tell some of my story and talk to people and, be with you and your beautiful presence, it's such a gift because I'm like, even the people who have worked with me for, like, I've had people I've worked with for a year, 2 years, 4 months, whatever, in my group program, 1-to-1. And they always say, I have such a hard time describing what it is that you do. And all I know is my life is transformed, but like, I don't have the words. How do I put it into words? And I always
Mm,
say, if any of you can figure this out for me and then write me a really, so I just say, just write a testimonial about your experience. But
mm,
everybody's experience is different. I say
yeah.
samesies different. We're suffering from some sort of malaise, which is we're discontent or we're anxious or we're scared or we're overwhelmed or we're having, like, life is lifing and I don't know what to do. And all the tools I tried don't work. And then I'm
Mm.
like, give me a call. Send up a flare.
Oh gosh, do you know what's been coming up for me? The phrase that's been coming up for me throughout our whole conversation is, I think, and not to make it about the name of this podcast, but I think that you help people see that it has to be me, but I'm not alone.
It's
It
right on
has
my
to be
website.
me to do
Yeah,
this or to make this happen, but not alone. And helping people see that we're resourced and that we can
yes.
resource each other and love our way through anything, but we need some tools, right?
Okay. We need some tools in our problem-solving repertoire, and even right on
And
my
the
website. Yeah.
willingness.
Well,
I
that's the thing.
really heard you when you said that you just need that willingness. And it just, and it just starts with permission too, doesn't it? It's just, oh God, there's just been so many mic drops, so many nuggets, of course, which there always is when speaking with you, working with you,
Thank you, honey.
being in your presence. And you're such a beautiful listener, which always makes for the best coach and the best mentor, and the
Mm.
love and the care and the trust. I could talk to you for hundreds of hours on a desert island and continually be fascinated by who you are and what you have to offer. So thank you so much for the way that you show up. I always close every episode with the same question, which is, when you have a dream in your heart and you don't feel like you have what it takes to make it happen, what do you say? What do you do?
I really stand by the belief that we all come through with our own individual curriculum, that we all have our own divine assignment. And I believe that if the dream is given to you, we kind of in writing we talk about the muse or the goddess or the divine helpers who help us to, we often say in spiritual traditions, right? Like I am just the faucet. I am not the water that flows through me. And one of the things I want to say is you kind of answered it already, is that if you've been given this assignment, I believe it was given to you because you are the only one that can really do it and do it in your way. And you might not do it as the big influencer over here or the one with the, $100,000 in a month friggin' coaching program over here. But you have your own experience, you have your own evidence, you have your own energy, you have your own point of view, you have your own magic, you have your own love to bring into the world. And that's the gig. That's the only gig, is to love yourself and love each other. I don't care what title you put on it. So if you have a dream, trust that you have been given that dream because it is yours. Will it look exactly like you think it's supposed to look? No, you might be surprised. But like, we have to stay open for business. And the big thing too is when you start to think, I can't do this, like me, like I have this wicked big dream. There's two things here. Stephen Pressfield, who's a brilliant writer, and he wrote like The War of Art and Turning Pro. He always says this: if you have a lot, because what you're describing, oh, not me, I can't do this, imposter, whatever it is, that to me is resistance. That's resistance. And Stephen always says, it's good news. He's like, resistance is a life force of its own. It's evil. Like, we have to fight back. That's why it's the war of art. Like, we have to push back against resistance. But he says, if you have a lot of resistance, it's a good sign, because it's like a tree being out in a sunny meadow. The bigger the tree, the greater the shadow. So if you have a lot of resistance, it's because this dream really matters to you. This dream really matters to you, and it's important, and that you do it. That however you gather the tools to help. But here's the thing, and again, you already said it. If you think, oh my God, how am I ever going to do this on my own? The answer is you don't have to. You have a spiritual team that you can gather around you to support you. There are humans who want to help you and love you. There is a coach out there or a book or a mentor that is just waiting. And like you said, one of my healers, one of my friends who's brilliant, Marianne C is her name. And she said her husband was a somatic therapist, and he once said to her, and she passed it on to me, she's like, information doesn't heal. Intimacy heals. It's getting intimate. It's getting intimate with all that information and all this stuff. So if you have a dream in your heart, pay attention, get quiet. Get quiet and listen. Listen to what your body and your heart is telling you. Listen to the whisper of the inner voice, the inner teacher, the gut instinct, the intuition. because you've been given a calling. I really believe that. Like, we're called and only you can do it. So find a cheerleader, find your balcony people, find the people who are going to stand beside you, walk along beside you, in front, behind. Remember, the divine has placed its angels all around you, for you will not be left comfortless.
Yeah, and just going back to that prayer that you shared with us, be you, be you, be you.
Please use me, please use me, please use me. And all you
And
have to do
yeah,
is show
please
up. Like,
use me.
show up, ask. You're like, what's my next step? Because you don't have to do it all. When we have a dream, what happens so often is we time travel into the future, and it seems so big and so impossible. And all you need to do is take the next right tiniest step. And when you wake up in the morning and you say, please have me go where you would have me go, that means I want to listen to, like, do I go here? Do I go there? Do I go to my friend's house? Do I stay home? Where would you have me go? What would you have me do once I'm there? What do you want me to say and to whom? Please use me. And we're saying, let me be in service to love. Let me be in service to all that is good, beautiful, and holy. And A Course in Miracles, it says, and if you don't like the word God, I always say, insert your own happy word. It says, child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Do not forget this. Do not forget this. That's the assignment. Love.
Oh, thank you for how you show up in the world. It's a magical thing.
You're so Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I say I never take it for granted when somebody invites me into their world and to share with their audience. And I just adore you, and it's been a pleasure. And just thank you so, so much.
So many more conversations to be had. Oh, I love the way that she moves through the world. And I really appreciate the way that she frames A Course in Miracles simply as a spiritual workbook and teaching tool. And the importance of taking personal responsibility for our stories. How are the programs and patterns of our family and culture and community limiting the way that we see and receive the world? That our thinking creates the reality that we experience, and being aware of the projections that inform our perceptions, that our mind projects and makes us believe that other things are the cause of our suffering, but it's those stories. People can only be as good in our presence as they first are in our mind. That we have agency and authorship over our lives. We can't control everything that happens, but we certainly get to choose how we respond. And as Marianne said to Karen, it doesn't matter how you got your suffering, it's yours now. So what are you going to do with it? The power of being constructive with our pain and embracing forgiveness for ourselves and others. That you can feed a grievance or have peace, but you can't have both. Honoring our sacred trauma as the light that leads us to see things in a different way and opens us up. That the work is refining who we are, shifting the old negative stories that don't serve us, not pretending like we don't have them, but having a willingness to look at them with gentle curiosity. That information doesn't heal, intimacy does. So get intimate with yourself, be proactive, and decide it has to be me to figure this out and take personal responsibility for it, but knowing that you don't have to do it alone. Send up that flare, as Karen says, that we can resource ourselves and each other, that you have a spiritual team that you can gather around you. There are humans who want to help you and love you. There's a mentor or coach or book or community that can help you. And the value of developing your unique relationship with the divine, whether you call it God or higher power, source, universe, or something else. Gathering your spiritual team, whether you believe in something greater than you or not, if you're driving the bus alone, you're in trouble. I loved the perspective that there are all kinds of people who love us into being, and those people are with us as potential. And we can listen to the nature of those better angels. The value of cultivating a daily spiritual practice, whatever that looks like for you, to build trust in your inner teacher, that the voice of love doesn't shout like the ego, it whispers, and that we've got to turn down the noise and get wide enough to hear it. So we can get into that fearless flow, as she calls it, that place in you that's untouched, by the things of the world. And the power of prayer, however you understand and practice it, it's just the act of asking for help. And meditation and getting quiet is how we can receive the guidance. I loved seeing your spiritual toolkit as your problem-solving repertoire. That in order to be on a journey where there's no distance from your head to your heart, it's about getting into your body. With meditation, journaling, breath work, connecting with nature, exercising outdoors, somatics, massage, dance, sacred circles, guidance from mentors and practitioners. That there's so many ways that we can stay in a place of connectivity. I loved her perspective about believing in the power of your dream, that we all have a divine assignment. And the dream is yours because you're the only one that can do it exactly this way. That you have your own energy and point of view and magic and love to bring to the world. And instead of wanting to be the next version of somebody else, how about starting with just being you, and that's enough? And you don't have to do it all. That we often time travel into the future and the dream seems so big and impossible, but all we have to do is show up, ask for help, and take the next step. And what she was saying about resistance really resonated with me, that we welcome resistance, but we push back against it. That having a lot of resistance is a good thing because it means the dream really matters to us. And it was interesting what she was saying about feeling safe. The world isn't a completely safe place. So the journey isn't about getting to a place of feeling completely safe. It's about feeling safe enough so we can do what we want to do. And sometimes that means you've got to do it a little bit scared. So definitely connect with Karen at KarenKenney.com. So many amazing resources and information. It's like being in a big warm hug. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and post in the Facebook group and let me know what resonated with you from this episode.
I want to hear about your It Has to Be Me story. So head on over to ithastobeme.com/stories to share it in our free community. You can also join the conversations we're having about this episode and others. I'm Tess Masters. Join me next week and we'll dive inside another great story to help us go from dreaming to doing.